Merci à toutes. Je déclare la séance ouverte, cette deuxième séance du comité.
I declare this session open, this meeting of the Environment Committee for the fourth Parliament today. We are in a hybrid format. And I would like to wish a warm welcome to everyone, of course, and I would also like to remind you that we are not to take any photos of the screen during the meeting, and we have some rules to follow. We're going to respect the 2 meters of social distancing, wearing a non-medical mask when we are here in the room. And I would also ask you, if you're in the room, to wear your mask at all times except for when you're speaking. And you also have hand sanitizer as needed. I would like to say that given the current circumstances, we've been advised that we can have 1 assistant per party only. So it's not per MP, but per party. And I see that this guideline is being respected here today. As you know, and I'm not saying anything new, you all have a lot of experience, and the witnesses have experience as well. You can use the language of your choice. And we also ask you to keep your microphone on mute up until you are given the floor.
Pretty much covers it for the for procedure and protocol. Before we start, we have 5 minutes, up to 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be 5 minutes, but up to 5 minutes of committee business. And essentially, the item of committee business we have to deal with is adopting the report of the steering committee. Our members all agreed to adopt the report. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much, and Happy New Year to you and to all committee members. It's great to be back here at work at ENVI. What I would suggest, though, on the subcommittee, while I totally understand the clerk is in a very difficult situation where lots of stuff gets discussed at subcommittee, while I do agree that we all agreed that the Bloc Québécois motion to study nuclear waste, and then the NDP study to study subsidies, and then some unyet to be determined or named a conservative study. The Liberal one does contain a 7 meetings reference, so I was wanting to see if we can either separate out the amount of because I don't believe we actually agreed to a number of meetings, and I do think that, and in good faith, Mr. Chair, I think we should have a discussion around that. So either we can remove the Liberal motion as it stands and refer that to the subcommittee to have a little further discussion just around the number of meetings. I'm fine with whatever subject Liberal members want to talk about. I respect their voters. I also just want to have a discussion, though, on the amount of time. So either we can send that to the subcommittee, or we could just delete the reference to the number of meetings, in this case the number 7, and then just simply approve it as is, and then have that discussion at an upcoming subcommittee meeting.
Mr. Longfield, I don't want to spend too much time. What I will do is, if this becomes a broader discussion, I will suggest that we discuss the subcommittee report on Thursday. I was hoping we could get it settled today, but Mr. Longfield.
Yeah, I put my hand up right away. I was going to move that we accept the report as presented to us.
Okay, so obviously, do we need unanimous consent? No, we can. No, yeah. Well, would we like to vote on whether we adopt the report as is?
No, Mr. Chair. If you find that motion in order, we can debate that. I'll just make an amendment then, just delete the reference for how many meetings, and then we can have a good faith discussion at the next subcommittee member. Like I said, I'm not opposed to Liberals doing a study. I actually think a water study would be rather enlightening. but I don't believe we agreed on the number of meetings yet. That's my recollection of it. If other subcommittee members would like to speak up on that, I'd be happy to. If I'm in the minority, we'll simply just have the motion pass. I do want to get to the Environment Commissioner, though.
Okay, I think we have the commissioner who's waiting. I would like to, propose that we just do this on Thursday here in the committee, and just get on with the
Point of order?
Yes. Well, wait a minute, Mr. Longfield, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I was just going to say that the meeting reference 7 weeks was in my motion that I presented to the committee, and so there wasn't a change there. That was before the subcommittee. So I think if there needs to be further work, so be it. But that is part of the motion that I presented.
Okay, but
point of order?
Yeah, sure. But I'm go ahead, Mr. Albus.
Yeah, we actually can't move on to the Environment Commissioner, and I do want to, until we resolve the report. You can't defer it from the subcommittee forward because it allows for today to happen.
Well, so who else? Ms. Collins? Oh, sorry,
I just
Mr.
wanted
Duguid.
to.
Sorry, Ms. Collins. Apparently, Mr. Duguid. That it was first. It's very hard, There's a screen. There's in person. There's hands going up and left, right, and center. Mr. Duguid.
Well, Mr. Chair, and I think this is in the spirit of where you're coming from. We have the Sustainable Development Commissioner waiting. Could we defer this to the end of the meeting and have the discussion? And because I think there will be considerable debate on this issue, and I think the honourable members want to get on to the Sustainable Development Commissioner.
Ms. Collins?
I was going to echo the same thing. If we could at least defer the conversation around the 7 meetings, if we can separate that out and continue on, we'd like to get to the commissioner.
Okay, so we're debating Mr. Albus's amendment to the to Mr. Longfield's motion to adopt the steering committee report. Is that correct?
Yes. I didn't enunciate a specific, though. So just to speed things up, Mr. Chair, I move that we amend the original motion that is for the Liberal study on water so that it does not refer to number of meetings and just say yet to be determined amount of meetings. And then we'll just pass that to the subcommittee. We can get moving.
Would somebody like to speak to this, to Mr. Albus's, I guess, amendment? I guess.
Sure.
Yes, Mr. Duguid.
Well, Mr. Chair, if I could, it seems that our friends from the NDP and the Conservatives have been chatting about this issue, and while I certainly hope they will come to the conclusion that 7 meetings or more is warranted on a topic that has been dominating our headlines. 2 of the honourable members, if not 3, their ridings have been underwater. We have a water crisis in this country. We have a climate change adaptation crisis in this country, and my friends from Manitoba will know that we've had the worst drought in some districts in 130 years. So I'm really surprised that members opposite wouldn't give this study its due. I guess their minds are not completely made up, and I will certainly be working hard to change their minds if they are proposing that the number of meetings be reduced. And Mr. Speaker, I would remind honourable members, I was there for your speech where the honourable member from Victoria asked you to reduce the number of meetings, I think from 9 to 7. You agreed. And, Mr. Speaker, I'm really disappointed in the honourable member from Victoria.
Madame Posey.
Oui, Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Chair, I have a question, a procedural question. I thought I understood from Mrs. Collins that we were suggesting to go directly to the commissioner and that this discussion would be held afterwards. Did I understand that or not? And Mr. Chair, I believe that you are able to make a decision to say what we're going to do. We're going to talk about this right away, or we're going to talk at the end of the meeting. Am I mistaken?
Vous pouvez faire une proposition.
You can make a proposal, Mrs. Posey, to this effect. I cannot decide unilaterally, but you can propose that this will be discussed at a later opportunity. So time is flying, and it will allow for less time for questions of the commissioner. So you can make a proposal. You can propose that we will discuss this on Thursday, for example. Is this what you're proposing? Is this your proposal? Well, I'm proposing and I'm asking, I'm requesting, I'm saying that my proposal would be to go immediately to the Commissioner of the Environment and departmental representatives. If there's time at the end of the meeting today, fine. And if not, the discussion can be held on Thursday. Honestly, I don't think we will have any time. We're already 15 minutes into this session, and witnesses don't have a lot of time to testify. Hang on, one moment.
Attends, je ne pas que mes témoins sur la nucléaire. Il peut pas.
Okay, excuse me, I'll see.
Unfortunately, Mrs. Posey, we have to deal with Mr. Alvis's proposal. So right now we're in the middle of a debate. I have Mr. Longfield who's raised his hand.
Mr. Longfield.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks to Madame Posey. I really like the direction she was taking to try to get back to our meeting. A dilatory motion to do that would be, I think, something that could be considered in order, and I would make that motion that we postpone the discussion of our motion, which again is exactly what I presented to the committee, and it's also the motion that we were considering in the last Parliament. So nothing has changed other than all of a sudden today at the last minute, Mr. Albus wants to reduce the number of meetings for a critical study for this committee to undertake that includes the Canada Water Agency, which should be reporting back to Parliament, and I would love to see what they're doing. Water is a critical issue. I agree with Mr. Duguid. We need meetings to do that discussion, but obviously this is going to be a longer discussion, so I would defer this debate until our next meeting.
Just a moment. Yes, Mr. Davidson.
And thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. And, you know, I respect everyone on this committee, and we're in a minority parliament. And to my colleague across the way here, you know, Mr. Chair, they're making the assumption we want to decrease the meetings on water. We just want to have an open discussion. Maybe we're going to need 9 days. Maybe we're going to need 8. Maybe it is 7. We just wanted a discussion. We might need more. We know how
I don't
important
think
water
so.
is.
I don't think that's where people are going.
Well,
But is it apparently, Mr. Longfield, you could propose that we adjourn this discussion, in which case I will reschedule it, and we can start with the commissioner if that's what you want to do.
Okay, I propose we adjourn the discussion.
Just a moment. So we vote on this right away? I'm going to vote on just adjourning this debate so we can get to our discussion with the commissioner, and then I'll decide. I'll schedule another meeting to discuss this. The point of order, is this a point of order, Mr.
Yes, it's a point of order, Mr. Chair. Again, if we end debate, we don't have a subcommittee report that allows us to go to the Environment Commissioner.
Well, actually, I think we kind of agreed to have the environment.
Well, I just,
at
you
our
know,
first
the whole
meeting.
point. That's why I was just hoping we could just quickly vote on this or quickly just say, yes, let's have the subcommittee work? I do want to hear from the Environment Commissioner, but I also we did not get agreement on the amount of meetings. We had an agreement that we'd have a
I understand that yes, but we the Environment Commissioner, but first we have to vote on Mr. Longfield's motion to adjourn this particular debate and do it at another time. Can we vote now?
So the vote is to adjourn debate. So we will now proceed to the vote. Mr. Dogood.
Aye.
Mr. Longfield.
In favor.
Ms. Taylor-Roy.
In favor.
Ms. Thompson.
In favor.
Mr. Weiler.
In favor.
Mr. Albus.
Opposed?
Mr. Davidson.
Opposed.
Mr. Dreeshen.
Opposed.
Mr. Mazier.
Opposed.
Madame Posey.
En accord.
And Ms. Collins.
In favor.
Okay, so we can proceed now with the Commissioner?
So the results of the vote is 7 yeas, 7 pour, 4 nays, 4 contre.
Okay, so we'll proceed with the hearing from the Commissioner. Commissioner, I believe you have prepared first of all, welcome, nice to see you again. And I believe you have prepared a 10-minute opening statement. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are happy to appear before your committee this morning. I'd like to acknowledge that this hearing is taking place from the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. With me today are Kim Leach, James McKenzie, David Normand, and Michelle Salvay, who were responsible for the reports that were tabled in the House of Commons on November 25th, 2021. I will start by providing an overview of the Commissioner's role before going over the findings of those reports. The Office of the Auditor General of Canada conducts performance audits, including audits of the environment and sustainable development that are led by the Commissioner, who is appointed by the Auditor General. We examine whether the activities and programs of federal organizations are managed with due regard to economy, efficiency, effectiveness, and environmental impact. We provide parliamentarians with objective, fact-based information and expert advice. On behalf of the Auditor General, the Commissioner reports to Parliament at least once a year on environment and sustainable development matters that the Commissioner considers should be brought to Parliament's attention. In practice, I will normally be reporting twice a year. The reports are referred to this committee. The Commissioner helps the Office of the Auditor General of Canada incorporate environmental and sustainable development considerations as appropriate across its work. This includes considering the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals when selecting, designing, and carrying out performance audits. These goals are a priority area for the work of the entire office. Selon la loi fédérale sur le développement durable,
the Commissioner also reviews and comments on the federal government's draft Sustainable Development Strategy under the Federal Sustainable Development Act. Once the strategy is implemented, we monitor and report on the extent to which federal departments and agencies contribute to meeting the targets of the overall federal strategy and the objectives of individual departmental strategies. We also review the fairness of the information in the federal government's progress reports on the implementation of the strategy. The Commissioner manages and reports on the environmental petitions process on behalf of the Auditor General. Through this process, Canadians can directly ask federal ministers specific questions about environmental and sustainable development issues under federal jurisdiction and are guaranteed a response. In addition, as you are aware, the Canadian Net Zero Emissions Accountability Act came into force in June 2021. The Act requires the Commissioner to examine, report on, and make recommendations about the Government of Canada's implementation of measures to mitigate climate change, including those meant to achieve the government's most recent greenhouse gas emissions target. I'm going to turn now to our recent reports. The first report that I would like to focus on provides the findings of our audit of the Emissions Reductions Fund for the oil and gas sector. This fund was part of the measures that the Government of Canada rolled out in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. It aimed to reduce harmful emissions while maintaining employment and encouraging investments in oil and gas companies. We found that the program was poorly designed because it did not link funding to net emission reductions from conventional onshore oil and gas operations. For example, in 2/3 of the 40 projects funded by the Emissions Reductions Fund, companies stated in their applications that the funding would allow them to increase their production levels. When production increases, so do the related emissions, and these increases were not reflected in Natural Resources Canada's projections. To help Canada to achieve its national targets for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, Natural Resources Canada should make sure that its policies, programs, and measures are based on reliable estimates of expected emissions reductions.
In this audit, we examined whether Environment and Climate Change Canada and Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada were working together using a risk-based approach to reduce algal blooms caused by excess nutrient pollution in 3 Canadian water basins. The 3 basins we examined were Lake Erie, Lake Winnipeg, and the Williston-St. John River. Canada has a stated goal of increasing sustainable agricultural production, which could increase nutrient runoff. Excess nutrients can lead to runaway growth of algae, which can in turn produce toxins that are harmful to humans, livestock, pets, and wildlife. We found that the 2 departments were moving in the right direction, but could have an even greater impact on freshwater quality outcomes if they further coordinated their science efforts and shared information with other organizations involved in water resource management. For the next report, as we do each year, we assess the progress of selected departments and agencies in implementing their sustainable development strategies, focusing on transparency and accountability in reporting. We reviewed departmental and agency actions under 3 federal goals: healthy coasts and oceans, pristine lakes and rivers, and sustainable food. Overall, reporting on actions to achieve the federal goals was poor. Departments and agencies did not provide results for almost half of the actions that they reported on. Gaps in reporting make it difficult for parliamentarians and Canadians to understand progress being made against Canada's sustainable development commitments. Our
recent reports also included the annual report on environmental petitions. We received 14 petitions from July 2020 to June 2021. They raised concerns in areas that included biodiversity, climate change, and toxic substances. I'm now going to turn to my last report, which is not an audit, but a summary of lessons learned from Canada's climate change efforts since 1990. After more than 30 years, the trend in Canada's greenhouse gas emissions, which create harmful climate impacts, is going up. Despite repeated government commitments to decrease emissions, they have increased by more than 20% since 1990. At the heart of this report are 8 lessons learned from Canada's action and inaction on the enduring climate crisis. Leadership is the first lesson. Stronger leadership and coordination are needed to drive progress on climate change. Other lessons include reducing dependence on high-emission industries, learning to adapt to climate change impacts, investing in a climate-resilient future, increasing public awareness, acting on and not just speaking about climate targets, involving all climate solution actors and protecting the interests of future generations.
For the federal government to achieve real outcomes on environmental protection and sustainable development, not just words on paper or unfulfilled promises. All too often, Canada's environmental commitments are not met with the actions needed to protect air, land, water, and wildlife now and for future generations. And this is a trend we urgently need to reverse. It is my hope that you'll invite us and government officials to appear before your committee on every one of our audits, and at any other time we may be able to support your work. Using our audit work and the expertise and insight of department and agency officials and other stakeholders helps your committee enhance accountability. Asking departments and agencies to provide the committee with action plans to implement our recommendations and any recommendations that the committee makes will also help raise the progress bar on environmental and sustainable development issues on behalf of all Canadians. Mr. Chair, this concludes my opening remarks. We're happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
Thank you, Commissioner DeMarco. We'll go to Mr. Albes for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Commissioner. I certainly appreciate the work that you and your office does. So, Commissioner, in your opening comments, you did discuss what I think is somewhat similar suggestions to what Public Accounts Canada, the committee, the Standing Committee, does on a regular basis. They, when an Auditor General reports come in, they review them, they have the Auditor General come in and speak to them, and then they usually, and again, I'm using this term habitually, will agree with the Auditor General, make recommendations, and ask for this an action plan from departments. Is that what you are suggesting in your comments?
That is something that the committee could consider to enhance accountability. And with your experience at Public Accounts, I'm sure you're aware that typically at the beginning of each parliamentary session, the Public Accounts Committee adopts a motion regarding those action plans. And it's something that could be done with this committee too, because, you know, as we are part of the Office of the Auditor General, and there's that accountability measure for Ms. Hogan's reports that go to Public Accounts Committee, you could consider having a similar accountability mechanism with respect to the reports that I table with the Speaker that are referred to this committee. Yes.
Okay, thank you for the answer. So we do have a government that prides itself on its own actions, its own policies, and I will be getting into some of the reports that are very critical of the government. But this is more of a meta question here than in regards to your suggestion. Are you not getting sufficient action plans and responses from the departments? Do they agree with you? And if so, are they not taking action on your recommendations?
That's a good question. And one of the advantages of having action plans produced at the committee is that we give our draft reports to the entities, such as federal departments, and they provide an immediate response, which we include in a text box in our reports. Those are their immediate thoughts on our recommendations. However, it takes longer to produce an action plan. And though we would have to wait, months to publish our reports if we waited for action plans. So there's an issue of the sort of short-term feasibility of a response and the longer-term feasibility of an action plan. By coming to the committee with an action plan after having had time to digest our report, consider an action plan that would breathe life to the response that the department has given, that would enhance accountability beyond the audit cycle that we work with in producing our reports.
So the government will answer to your recommendation and say they agree, but it seems to be you're suggesting that the government doesn't take it seriously enough to actually respond with an authoritative action plan. So is it because they don't respect your office, or is it because they simply don't want to be accountable or follow through with your recommendations?
Well, I don't think there's an across-the-board answer for every report, because some of our recommendations are implemented more diligently than others. But it was certainly one of the lessons learned for our own report on lessons learned on climate change. When we put together that appendix in the lessons learned on climate change, we saw how many of our recommendations over the years on climate change were accepted by the government. So it wasn't a case of them rejecting our recommendations. They were accepted, but we weren't seeing that follow through in terms of results, in terms of actions. So that's why the committee could consider this enhanced accountability of requiring action plans.
So if my wife asks me to do the dishes and I accept her recommendation and then proceed not to do it over a long period of time, Commissioner, wouldn't my wife be willing to say that I have rejected that recommendation or that I don't respect her office?
I can't speak for her or for you, but I would say that you didn't follow through on the commitment in your response.
So it really either the government is making pretty claims and then just letting things slide back to whether it's bureaucratic inertia, whatnot, or they just don't care. I'll just move on though, because do I have about a minute left, Mr. Chair?
About a minute, yeah.
Thank you very much. So Report 5, Lessons Learned from Canada's Record on Climate Change, and I do hope in a second round of this that I could ask some more specific questions. But I'd like to again ask a meta question. Why is it you've chosen historical analysis rather than a performance audit?
Fairly briefly, if you could, Commissioner, we're on a tight timeline today for obvious reasons. Go ahead,
Thank you. Thank you for the question and the guidance, Mr. Chair. We wanted to give Canadians and Parliament the full picture of Canada's climate record. Audits are very important, and that's the mainstay of our work, but they're typically time limited and may focus on one program or another, like the Emissions Reduction Fund, which we may talk about later. We wanted to weave together all of the lessons we could have learned from many years of audits on climate change into one comprehensive report. That was the point of that report.
Thank you. Mr. Duguid, 6 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank the Commissioner for his report and particularly his excellent work on river basins. I was talking about water not too long ago. We have members gathered here who have faced the water challenges up close and personal, droughts, floods. We know what our country is facing. We have a water crisis. And you point out the need for coordination between departments, the Agriculture Ministry along with Environment and Climate Change Canada. But the last time I checked, 26 departments touch water in one form or another, departments and agencies. And you may have read in Minister Guilbeault's mandate letter the need for the creation of a Canada Water Agency to coordinate not just what Ag Canada and Environment and Climate Change Canada are doing, but have that whole of government approach, cross-ministry approach to deal with some of our water challenges. I wonder if you would have some comments on the need for new institutional relationships, because most water challenges are what I would call governance challenges.
Thank you for the question. The water issue illustrates the complexity of the environmental and sustainable development challenges that we face. Many times, these issues that are intractable and longstanding are ones where there is dispersed decision-making authority, not only across departments and institutions within one level of government, but across levels of government, provincial, municipal, Indigenous, and across boundaries, in the case of international boundaries for these three water basins. So as our environmental and sustainable development problems have become more complex and more difficult to address through single department with one window approaches and so on, the need for more coordination and more coordination bodies, so long as they focus on not just coordination, but real results in the water in this case, or on land or in water or in the atmosphere or with wildlife. So I would suggest that on many of these issues of a horizontal nature like water, that we need to increase the level of coordination and increase the focus on tangible progress in the form of outcomes.
You've just described what we hope the Canada Water Agency will do, and I hope you will be auditing the Canada Water Agency in the next year or two. My next question comes from your report, where you highlight that we're falling behind on investing in a climate-resilient future. That points to climate change adaptation. Again, in the mandate letter of the minister, it calls for him to have a climate change adaptation strategy plan by the end of 2022. What kind of metrics, what kind of design of a program would you be looking for so that it results in tangible outcomes?
Well, I can speak to that issue in part, and I say in part because we're actually in the throes of an audit relating to climate resilient infrastructure. So we'll have more to say on that later this year. But this is another issue that requires coordination because even though the types of impacts vary across the country, there does need to be a coordinated approach for prioritizing. The scale of problems is immense and growing each year, as many of your constituents well know. So the features that we would like to be seeing is that there is ample resources put to the problem, that we work simultaneously on adaptation, resilience, and mitigation, and that we do not just give up on mitigation and focus just on adaptation or vice versa. We need to work on both to reduce the scale of effects as well as to move forward with adaptation. We will have much more to say on that in our next report on that very issue.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Chair, I think I've got about a minute left, so let me just address one more issue. I think the Commissioner rightly points out that governments have been long on rhetoric and short on the delivery of results over the last 30 years. But would the Commissioner agree that with the most recent climate plan, which I believe is granular, detailed, that and we have begun implementing measures like carbon pricing, that that we have started down the road of delivering concrete results, and I wonder if he's confident about the 36% reduction in emissions that are projected by the plan.
Maybe you could weave your answer into in a response to another question. I'm sorry about that.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Madame Posé, à vous la parole pour 6 minutes.
Mrs. Posé, 6 minutes. Yes, thank you. Hello, Mr. Commissioner, and thank you for being here today. And thank you for these reports that you've tabled. At the last legislature, we talked about funding of the Commissioner's office, of your organization, of the means that you have at your disposal. So now we have new responsibilities that have been given to you through C-12 passed in June. Have the financial resources increased? Could you tell us for how many years these budgets have gone up, if they have? Is this allotted for over the longer term? Answer. Thank you for the question. This is an important new mandate with the zero net emissions bill, and we have not received a new budget, a specific budget for this new mandate. We are studying our options for this new mandate, and up until now we have not yet decided, or we don't really know how much this is going to cost yet, and if we will request further resources, or if we'll be able to find resources within our current budget. So this is a new mandate, yes, and our report, our first report, needs to be tabled at least in 2024. And so we are looking at our different options right now and how we can fund resources for these options. Question. In one of your reports on the federal strategy for sustainable development, it was quite a despairing picture. And my question is close to that of my colleague. How can you do this within a federal strategy if your recommendations are not systematically implemented with follow-ups and with specific deadlines? Answer. Yes, this was the question asked by Mr. Albus. We do need accountability, and it's great to put out reports and to receive answers, but in my opinion, actions count more than intentions. So I would like to see if I hope that we will have an effect, and we hope to concentrate on results and not just on answers. Question. In your report, you also affirm that when production, oil and gas production rises, emissions rise as well. So we know that the government has made many promises to cap greenhouse gas emissions. They promised this during the campaign. They were not talking about production, oil and gas production. So if we look at the coastal and program, doesn't this teach us that it's one thing to promise reductions? If the state is increasing production, this really doesn't amount to much. Answer. What counts with the temperature of the planet are emissions and the concentrations of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, and how many are absorbed in the oceans or by plants and so on. So we do need to have targets that look at the total amount of emissions, net emissions, and there are many different options to address this. I think that now Canada, if we look at the lessons learned from climate change, has begun to realize that we need to have a maximum set level. We're looking for zero net emissions, so that means that we need to reduce the net emissions, and they have to reach zero by 2050, and we're looking at 45% between now and 2030. So yes, we need to cap these emissions in order to reach our targets for 2030 to 2050. Question. Yes, so to cap this, we also have to reduce production. Answer. They're linked. And there are many different options. There are 64 different programs. So I can't tell you what the entire recipe is. And so there are many actions. Question. So what I've read in your reports is that they were the most strict or that had been presented since 1995, and we know that the Liberals and the government has announced targets without having measures or plans to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The plans are there, but the actions are not following. So after 7 years of Liberal governments and a nationalized pipeline, can we reasonably evaluate the Canadian climate policy without saying that the failure is before 2015, because you were saying, okay, well, in your report, there are many things that come from beforehand. You have 10 seconds, Mr. DeMarco. Answer. Well, it's hard to answer this in 10 seconds. Okay. We'll go to Mrs. Collins. Mrs. Collins, 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Commissioner, for appearing before us. I also want to thank you and your team for these critical reports on these critically important and pressing issues. Following your report, the Minister of Natural Resources said that the Emissions Reduction Fund was not the kind of fossil fuel subsidy that the government had promised to eliminate. And that's despite, as you reported, 27 of the first 40 projects funded by the program claiming that they would be increasing production. isn't handing out taxpayer money to oil and gas companies without linking funding to actual reductions in greenhouse gas emissions a fossil fuel subsidy?
So this is a fossil fuel subsidy. Only the minister can answer your question whether it's the type of fossil fuel subsidy that he wishes to eliminate, but it is a fossil fuel subsidy, no doubt.
Thank you. And you said that you were disappointed in the department's response to your audit and that doesn't bode well. Does the response from the minister that this isn't a subsidy also raise concerns for you, given the government's promises to eliminate fossil fuel subsidies?
Well, we just received the information from the department on the changes that they proposed to the Emissions Reduction Fund, and whether we'll do a follow-up audit on it or not. It's too early to tell whether they've addressed the key problems in the fund. So I would say too early for us to really indicate one way or the other whether the changes recently announced for round 3 of the Emissions Reduction Fund intake will properly address our recommendations. I do note that you have departmental officials slated to appear before the committee, and so you could ask questions of them as to how well their changes to the program will match up with the recommended changes that we made in our report in November.
Thanks so much. And I did watch the committee hearings yesterday that you had at Natural Resources, and you did express some concern about the response you received from the department. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I expressed that same sentiment on the day of tabling because they didn't agree completely with all of our 6 recommendations. They only agreed completely with 4 of them, and 2 of them they partially agreed. And even on the ones they agreed, there was a lot of gray in their response. Even though it says agreed, it was followed by a lot of words after where you weren't quite sure whether they fully agreed or not. So based on those responses, I was of the view that it didn't bode well. This is another reason why, after a few months now from the responses, requiring departments to put forward actual detailed action plans to this committee will allow you and your colleagues on the committee to have that accountability. Okay, what are you exactly going to do in response to these recommendations? Here, we've seen immediate action in the changes to round 3. Whether they're meaningful or not would require further research and analysis.
Thanks so much. Your report on Canada's climate record is very critical of the lack of action Canada has taken to reach its climate targets, saying, your words, that they can't keep going from failure to failure. Since the Paris Agreement in 2015, Canada has continued to have emissions rise. We've become the worst performer on climate action in the G7. Can you elaborate on some of the failures you see that have led Canada to fall so far behind our peers when it comes to action on the climate crisis?
Well, that's a big question. I would say that please look at the 8 lessons learned, because we couldn't narrow it down to one silver bullet that if we fix this, then the climate crisis will be addressed in Canada. But we have those 8 lessons learned, and we have included in there questions you may pose to departments, not just in response to our reports, but you could, in the context of the other studies that you're considering, as I heard earlier today in your deliberations. So those are questions you can pose to the departments in terms of tackling this issue. I would add that Canada has been the worst performer amongst the G7 since Paris. Canada has also been the worst performer since this whole file started in the early 1990s in the Rio Convention on Climate Change in 1992. Since that time, and I would add that for the last 3 decades, we have official data from 1990 to 2019 because there's a bit of a time lag in retaining the data. But Canada is also the worst amongst the G7 from 1990 to now, not just from Paris to now. So that's one of the reasons we looked at the 30 years rather than just the recent history.
And, you mentioned the lessons learned, and one of the lessons that you highlighted in your report was the need to reduce dependence on high emission industries. Oil and gas makes up the largest, a huge and growing portion of our emissions. And I want to dig into that a little bit more. what kind of risks does Canada face, both environmentally and economically, if we don't start seriously planning for this shift to a low carbon economy and really ensuring that those high emission industries are reducing their emissions?
20 seconds, please, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, the world is on its way to a net zero future. Even the International Energy Agency notes that. Canada should get ahead of the curve in a just transition to make sure no one is left behind in that transition. But it can't just stick its head in the sand and hope that it will catch up eventually.
Thank you.
The economy and the environment are too important to leave to a later date.
Thank you. We'll go to the 5-minute round. Mr. Dreeshen.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and to our witness, Commissioner, welcome. Let me begin by stating that as a proud Albertan, I acknowledge the hard work and the commitment of Canada's natural resource workers, and I give thanks that we as Canadians are blessed with these treasures. It's what makes us a nation that has been the foundation of our outstanding contribution to not only our citizens, but to the entire world. So whether it's agriculture, forestry, mining, or oil and gas, Canadians have always sought the right balance between the environment and growth. And therefore, protecting our environment by proper stewardship of our water, our soil, and our air is something that all Canadians should celebrate, and I believe this report speaks to the importance of this. I live north of the 49th parallel, quite a ways north, and it has been said that changes in latitude mean changes in attitude. And I understand the issues of high-density urban settings and the love of isolated island paradises, but I also understand the uniqueness of our country. The special accommodations that allow for hydro projects, the unique Canadian technology that allows for nuclear power generation, and the world-class oil and gas industry that generates the mobile energy that allows us to live in this vast country that spans 6 time zones and reaches from points as far south as California to the North Pole. That's the Canada that I love. Now, having served as a member of Public Accounts, I also appreciate the work of your office. And I'd like to deal with Report 4, the Emissions Reductions Fund from NRC, specifically the onshore program, which makes specific assumptions about the potential benefit of government declarations. And I'd like to start with Exhibit 4.1, which shows the reality that emissions have risen from 2016 to 2020. And I believe that the Commissioner had already mentioned the difference between 1990 and present. But if you take a look at the linear target for 2030, as it goes down, that was from the 2005-2006 point and the 2010 points, which coincidentally, the low point of 2010 is where the Harper Conservatives were there. The model for Exhibit 4.4 shows that prior to 2020 and onward, what would be the case if neither the methane, the federal methane reduction program nor the onshore program is implemented. It then shows lower trajectories illustrating expected reductions from each of these 2 programs. Now, this is in the report, but I also noticed that this comes from the World Resources Institute of 2014. The other chart that I talked about was actually a 2021 chart. So we're making some assumptions that that there would be expected reductions by complying with these federal methane regulations or the onshore program, to which you say that there are difficulties in trying to track down exactly what has taken place. And if we go to section 432, that speaks of the overestimate of emission reductions estimated from the onshore program, and it further stated in 433 that estimates did not consider overlap of programs, and as your analysis has stated, these estimates are not accurate. So my question is, if these programs are ill-advised and will not meet targets, would a program that incentivizes innovation specific to Canada's unique greenhouse gas realities be a more logical goal, thereby recognizing advances in both renewable and non-renewable energy resources? And does your department have the ability to track such metrics?
Okay, thank you for the question. There's a lot there, so I'll just highlight a few issues. First of all, the question of environment and economy, or environment and growth, I think there's a growing recognition that we need to work on the two in parallel tracks, and that it's not necessarily a trade-off or one or the other. It's a trade-off in the short term, but in the long term, a healthy environment and a healthy economy should coincide with one another. So we should work together to this cleaner net zero future in a way that supports both the economy and the environment. And with respect to your question regarding options such as innovation, obviously innovation and new technologies will be an important part of that transition to a greener future, a net zero future. And it would be one of many different strategies. I don't think, as I said before, there's no one silver bullet. It's a component of the strategy.
Mr.
Yes.
Longfield for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Commissioner, it's wonderful to have you here. We just passed our accountability legislation in June, and virtually our first meeting, you're here to talk about accountability, which is so critical to us getting to the results that Canadians are expecting from us. I want to build on some of Madame Pose's questions, which I thought were excellent. The funding and the budget. I know we had increased the budget for the Office of the Auditor General, and that she was going to be hiring some support people to look at the environment. Is that something that you're evaluating to see whether you need additional funding carved off, or are you working with her? Or are you working with the government?
So we're one office, the Office of the Auditor General, and I'm appointed by the Auditor General. The teams represented on this call with our principals are teams that work on both reports for Ms. Hogan and reports for me. So it's an integrated model. The funding that you're talking about that was announced in the fall economic statement of 2020 is received and has been received, and the hiring has taken place for that. I believe Ms. Pose was asking whether we got additional funding tied to the Net Zero Act in June of this year. Right. There was no additional funding for that.
Right.
The last increase was from the amounts from the fall 2020 economic statement.
Great, thank you. Really well clarified, thank you. And so that's an evaluation as we pass legislation to make sure that the enabling part of the legislation is covered off through funding.
Yeah, so we're assessing our options as to delivering on that mandate. And we can speak more about that at our next appearance.
Great. I really think that part of it is critical, and the action items that come from the departments are critical. I served on public accounts as well, and that is a nonpartisan committee that really looks at results. I hope this committee will reflect that type of an attitude when it comes to climate change, and that we're working on the problem and not trying to get in each other's way, but to enable each other to get to there for results. The reporting, though, of the action items, Canada leads in some ways in our public accounts there. Is this something that you're seeing the departments embracing? I know when we were getting reports on against the United Nations sustainability goals, as an example, not all departments were embracing that. Is that a hurdle that we need to get over, or is that something that you see is going to evolve quickly?
So one of the patterns we've noted is that it's not difficult for departments or governments to embrace environment and sustainable development objectives and goals, including the specific 17 UN SDGs. It's really the operationalization of those commitments and the focus on results rather than just on process. That's where we're seeing the problems. That helps account for the fact that we have a curve on emissions that's going up for 20% for 3 decades instead of down. There was no shortage of commitments to bring the emissions down. There was a shortage of action. So that's the another reason for action plans and another reason to focus on results.
Thank you. And as you're structuring your audits and your planning, emissions intensity seems to be a number that would be the best number for us to track. As Mr. Dreeshen had mentioned, in 2010, we were coming out of a global recession. Our production was down. The market was down globally. Our emissions dropped because of production being down. Now production is increasing. Our emissions are increasing. Rather than looking at that curve, the curve to zero is the curve that we should be looking at. And could you comment on the industry is taking steps to get the emissions intensity down? Is that a number that you're focusing on?
Improvements in emissions intensity, which have been happening for quite some time. There's been a partial decoupling of growth and emissions in Canada in terms of population and production. So that's a good trend. But the atmosphere responds to the total net emissions, sources and sinks. So if you increase production and get more efficient at it, the atmosphere responds to the total emissions, not the intensity.
No, your emissions have to outpace the increase in production in order to get progress. That's clear, and I think that's a challenge when we're a resource-intense economy. I mean, Canada is one of the leading reserves for oil and gas, and we have that dichotomy of how do we do this efficiently.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Madame Posé now for 2.5 minutes. Madame Posé.
5 minutes.
Thank you. I thought I had only 2.5 minutes. I'm very pleased to see that I have 5.5. Mrs. Fosé. It is 2.5. Oh. Oh, my happiness was very short-lived. Okay. Mr. Commissioner, I think that I will leave reports aside and I'll ask a question on the reports to come. So we see on the website that your teams are working on the publication on a report on radioactive waste management, and this will be in 2022, and you are beginning a study. And at the committee, we're going to study this same sector as of next week, but the calendar of the Nuclear Commission, we see that permits will be given out for Chalk River, and a reactor will be retired. So I believe in the principle of precaution. Don't you think that giving out permits from the Canadian Commission should be suspended in waiting the conclusion of our work by the committee and the publication of your report in the fall of 2022? Answer, that's a government choice. It's up to the government to decide. We do have an audit on the subject, yes, and we believe that it will be published in the fall. Initiatives don't stop just because we have an audit underway. So I cannot speak for the government if they want as to if they want to delay the project or not. But there are very important issues around nuclear waste, and the government should respect the important work that your organization is doing and also the work of our committee. We have to have information before creating a precedent. Allow me to come back now to your former reports. Now, with your experience in Ontario, with renewed budgets, are you confident and optimistic that the next 6 years of your mandate will allow the government to mobilize and to act according to your recommendations and finally take the expected trajectory? Mr. Marco, 15 seconds. Well, that's what I hope. We'll see. I'm quite optimistic, and I'm more optimistic than I was in the past because everyone understands the challenge that we have with in the environment. Thank you, Mrs. Collins. 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We had been talking a little bit about the lessons, and another one of the lessons that you highlight is the need to invest in a climate resilient future. But you found that Canada hasn't been a key player in the international discussion on sustainable finance. Are we at risk of being left behind and allowing other countries to set the agenda on this?
Yes, as we note in the report, it's an emerging issue, a very fast-moving issue, both at the governmental level and in the private sector as well, in terms of green finance and so on. So that train left the station a while ago. I wouldn't say that Canada was in the first car of that train, but it does have the opportunity to catch up. And you have see in both, I guess it would be Section 23 of the new Net Zero Act, some movements towards government accountability for the Minister of Finance on risks and opportunities related to climate change, and in the mandate letters requiring moving forward with mandatory climate risk disclosure. So it appears that the wake-up call has, been heard, and they'll be playing catch-up, but at least they are moving forward now.
Thanks. And Canada's current climate plans aren't projected to achieve Canada's target of 40 to 45% below 2005 levels by 2030. Definitely not on track for the IPCC's recommendation of cutting emissions by half, 50%. So clearly more policy action is needed. We're still waiting to see if the emissions reduction plan as required under the Net Zero Emissions Accountability Act. But you've also said that Canada needs to shift its focus to actually meeting targets and not just making plans. How do you see the role of your office to really keeping them on track?
30 seconds, please.
Yeah, so through our new mandate under the Net Zero Act, we will be keeping a constant eye on this file. And as you know from the lessons learned, we aren't going to just look at plans, but we're going to look at results, because we've had lots of plans that have added up over the years. And I'm sure the next one in March, I'm not sure, but I'm hopeful that the one that comes out in March will add up as well. But really what we need to do is meet the plans, not just make them.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Collins. Mr. Mazier.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Commissioner, for coming out today. I'm focusing on Report 3 on water basins, and I've always been of the thought that the agriculture should be set up as part of the solution when it comes to environmental challenges, and working. The environmental department should be working with agriculture and agriculture producers, people in the landscape. So, do you believe that the Environment and Climate Change Canada is working enough with Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, the two departments?
So there's room for improvement there. The report on the 3 water basin indicated that they were moving in the right direction. There was often mechanisms in place for some coordination, but not enough. We also noticed, and this is perhaps something for a future audit, we also noticed that despite the cooperation and the coordination, still long-standing problems with the actual water quality. And as per my focus on outcomes and results and not just on process, if we look at this issue again, or if this committee looks at this issue in the context of the water study that you were debating earlier today, I would propose that you ask for solutions that are going to actually affect the water quality itself, not just the cooperation related to water quality. That focus on outcomes is crucial. I grew up next to the Great Lakes, and Lake Erie was the closest water body, and it's still, in terms of eutrophication, still a fairly big problem. I shouldn't say still a big problem, 50 years later, and lots of coordination, lots of cooperation, but not enough results, right? And that, of course, includes the U.S. in that fact there too.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm from Manitoba, so Lake Winnipeg is near and dear to our heart as well. So on Section 327 of your report discussed the lack of information sharing, actually, between Environment and Agri-Food Canada here, and I'll quote out of the report. Neither department has a formal and consistent process for sharing information about risks with others. So can you tell me how a government is supposed to meet their targets when one department is doing one thing and another department is doing another?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I think what I'll do is I'll have Principal Jim McKenzie address that specific question if he's available and can turn on his video.
Actually, Commissioner, I have more questions for you, so we can go back when Mr.
Okay.
McKenzie will be back here for the next hour.
I think he's available. No, he's just here for this hour.
Okay.
Here he is.
Hi. Yes, thank you, sir. Thank you for the question. I'll be brief. We did find that there was some coordination, some sharing of information. What we found was that there were no formal mechanisms that would allow departments to share information on risks with each other, which we felt would provide them with a more complete picture of, for example, areas of the country that they needed to focus on more, information gaps that would prevent them, or if they were to be addressed, would help them better understand some of the
So if I
issues.
could just sort of summarize that, they're operating still in silos and they're not communicating. Basically, is what they could do it a lot better, I guess, to meet their goals, and that needs to happen to meet their goals, basically. How important, back to the commissioner, how important would you say local involvement is to reaching our climate targets? And as far as underwater management especially, there's people out there, I represent a very rural riding. It's the size of Nova Scotia, and it drains, it's all part of the Assiniboine watershed. How important do you think it is working with those managers of the landscape, those agriculture producers, and working with them at the ground level?
It's absolutely crucial. Addressing climate change, drought, flooding, and so on, it requires a whole of society approach. And even though I'm reporting to the federal government and auditing the federal government's role, they're not the only player on all of these issues, whether it's climate or water. There are various different levels of involvement, and often those people who are closest to the land, whether it's farmers, local water managers, local residents, and so on, will know best the issues that affect them in the local watershed, for example. So absolutely crucial to involve all levels of government, all private and public sector agencies, civil society, and Indigenous communities.
Thank you. We'll go now to Ms. Taylor-Roy for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you so much, Mr. DeMarco, for being here this morning. I'm actually finding the conversation, despite the report recommendations or the reports, the findings to be very encouraging. And the fact that you are here, that you are fulfilling this task and coming up with these recommendations for action and coordination, I think will help us to move in a better direction than we, as you have pointed out, our governments have done over the past 30 years. I just wanted to follow up on one of the statements made earlier, and that was one of the members said that he thought that we had always done a good balance, or we had had a proper balance between environment and growth. I was wondering, it's a very high level question, but given the results of your historical analysis, could you comment on whether you think we have the proper balance right now and how you would see that shifting?
That's a big question. And first, on your first point, I would commend you to read the last page of our climate change lessons learned report if you haven't already, because we do strike an optimistic note there. And we're hopeful that this can be turned around. It's too late to stop climate change, but we can at least mitigate and reduce the magnitude of the potentially catastrophic effects. So, I mean, we live on a finite planet with a certain amount of carbon. We don't want to have too much of it in the upper atmosphere and too little of it in the biomass and in the water and in the soil and the earth. So yeah, I mean, we have to reconcile economic development with environmental protection in the long term, because we do live on a finite planet with finite resources. There has to be an approach, a sustainable approach, as opposed to looking at it as growth at the expense of the environment, because the environment ultimately provides us with the air we breathe, the water we drink, and the food that we eat. So there needs to be more of what I would call an integrated approach, and this is reflected in the Federal Sustainable Development Act, an integrated approach to the environment and economy, and to move past perhaps the more old style trade-off approach that we'll protect the environment when it's in times of luxury or when it's feasible, but economic growth takes the precedence. They have to go hand in hand, and that's what I think a net zero future looks at, is a healthy environment and a healthy economy working together as opposed to at odds with each other.
Thank you. Yes, I agree. And one of the ways I think that we can mobilize in terms of our actionalize some of these things is really having more quantification of the cost to our economy of some of the things that are being done that are affecting our environment. And I know there's movement towards that with the different risk management and risk perspectives. Do you think more has to be done on that in our government in order to achieve that kind of quantification and the ability for people to see what the economic impact is of doing less on the environment?
Absolutely. Externalities in economic theory have been a major problem in terms of environmental progress. Many of the true costs of doing business for example, fossil fuels over the years before carbon pricing were externalized and not reflected in either the cost of doing business or the cost to consumers. But we ultimately pay for that in terms of climate-related disasters, extreme weather, and so on. So reducing those externalities, using the principle of internalization of cost, polluter pays, a lot of things like that will help us have a full picture. And as I said, once you do that, once you internalize social and environmental and economic costs into a comprehensive model, you will see more of a dovetailing between the environment and the economy, as opposed to looking at it mainly from a financial point of view, where one could profit by externalizing costs to society and the environment. But from a full economic point of view, it's not as good news as a story. It may be profitable for the entity involved, but it may not be economically or environmentally sound for society as a whole. So yes, cost internalization and quantification of some of these ecosystem services and other natural assets that we have, nature-based solutions that come into play here too, all emerging and critically important issues. Because as someone mentioned, one of the biggest impacts of the environment each year by government are its budget decisions, not just the regulatory decisions of the Environment Department or the Natural Resources Department in a given jurisdiction. So once we look at those together, we'll be on a
Thank you very much.
track.
Great.
Thank
so,
you.
So,
Thank you.
could I
Sorry,
just...
we're up. Time's up, Ms. Taylor Roy.
Okay.
I'm sorry
Thank
about
you.
that because it was a very interesting question. So we're going to have a very, very short break to bring in witnesses from the Department of Agriculture and Agri-Food, Natural Resources and Environment. So, Mr. Clerk, I'll let you take over to bring in the new witnesses. We're suspending for a couple of minutes. Yeah, do I have to use this? Okay. If I have to, I have to. We're suspending. Witnesses from the three departments I mentioned originally. I would like to read the names of everyone who's on the call, but in the interest of time, you have that in front of you on the notice of meeting. Each department has 5 minutes as per routine motions. However, whatever you can do to come in under that 5 minutes would be greatly appreciated by your chair. I will start with the Department of Agriculture and Agri-Food for 5 minutes. I don't know. I imagine it's Mr. Parry who would be speaking, but I'm not certain.
I think I'm
Campbell?
actually.
Is it Mr. Campbell who's going?
It is Mr.
Okay,
Campbell
go ahead,
speaking.
Mr. Campbell, for 5 minutes and less if you can.
Thank you. Honorable members, I'm pleased to be here today to talk about Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada's contribution to the report on scientific activities in selected water basins by the Commissioner of Environment and Sustainable Development. AAFC welcomes the findings of the Commissioner as part of our commitment to continuous improvement. We will continue to work with our colleagues at Environment and Climate Change Canada to improve information sharing and collaboration. AAFC and ECCC will update their Memorandum of Understanding on Science and reestablish national and regional joint science committees. For each water basin, we will work together to review our respective departmental objectives and research projects. And we will closely track our outreach and knowledge transfer activities to ensure our external partners are getting the information they need. Through these joint science committees, we will identify new opportunities to coordinate our research. Our common goal is to help Canadian farmers and food processors continue to be global leaders in the field of sustainable agriculture. Mr. Chair, Canadian farmers are an important part of the climate change solution. Farmers already contribute to safeguarding our environment and water quality through sustainable practices such as fencing, tree planting, and reduced tillage. At AAFC, we're working with farmers to help them protect our soil and water resources for future generations. Over the past 3 years, we have been bringing researchers, farmers, and other stakeholders together to form collaborative research networks known as living laboratories. Together, they develop and test sustainable farming practices and technologies that help reduce the farm's environmental footprint. The research takes place directly on farmers' fields. Farmers can see the results in real time and can adopt innovative practices more quickly. And they share their knowledge across Canada, so other farmers can learn from their peers how to apply new stewardship tools and approaches to reducing emissions, build healthier soils, boost production, and enhance wildlife habitat. Living labs are now up and running across Canada in Prince Edward Island, Quebec, Ontario, and the Eastern Prairies. In PEI, farmers and researchers are working together to find the best ways to apply fertilizers so that they can save money, help the environment, and reduce greenhouse gases all at the same time. In Quebec, farmers, researchers, and First Nations are looking at cover crops to reduce soil erosion. And in Manitoba, they're capturing and storing water on farm to prevent nutrient runoff while seeding plants that will attract pollinators. The Living Labs model is also the cornerstone of our new Agricultural Climate Solutions Program, which will support regional collaboration networks across the country to develop climate-smart solutions on the farm. The Living Labs approach has been endorsed by the G20 Ministers of Agriculture as a novel way to accelerate the development of sustainable agricultural practices and technologies around the world. And we are pleased with the Commissioner's recognition of the Living Labs as a model for collaboration in both planning and project execution. We will draw from the Living Labs collaborative approach and apply its best management practices to our ongoing projects with partners, including other departments such as ECCC. So to sum up, Mr. Chair, Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada agrees with the audit recommendations. We welcome the findings of the Commissioner as part of our commitment to continuous improvement, and we will take action to improve information sharing and collaboration with Environment and Climate Change Canada. My colleague Matt Perry is also here today and will be able to address questions you may have on the department's progress in implementing sustainable development strategies.
Thank you.
Thank you again for the opportunity. We look forward to the discussion.
Thank you for being so brief. So we'll go to the Department of Natural Resources. Is it Ms. Johnson who will be speaking?
It is indeed.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Fantastic. Well, listen, good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for the opportunity to be here. I'm speaking from Ottawa, as I mentioned a little earlier, which is the unceded territory of the Algonquin-Anishinaabe people. The Government of Canada's climate plan commits to decarbonization across all economic sectors by 2050. This includes, as you folks well know, a price on carbon pollution, strengthening existing methane regulations, clean fuels regulations, and putting a cap on emissions from the oil and gas sector. The Emissions Reduction Fund is part of that plan, and one part of the comprehensive set of tools that's going to be needed to achieve our climate objectives, to support jobs, and to grow and secure the opportunities from the net zero economy. The program was launched in 2020 as a COVID response measure. The program sought to ensure continued reduction of methane emissions at a time of record low energy prices and to maintain jobs during a very difficult period. And it did that. In its just over its first year, $142 million were invested in 93 projects, most involved in small and medium-sized enterprises across Western Canada, and having a positive impact on the local economies, such as Estevan, Brandon, Slave Lake. Those projects are expected to deliver 4.7 megatons of emissions reductions in the first 12 months after they're completed. So that's, just to put it into sort of equivalent, that's about taking 1 million cars off the road. The pandemic is continuing, but at the same time, we agree with the audit of the Commissioner for Environment and Sustainable Development that thankfully, many of the economic circumstances since the program was introduced just almost over a year ago have changed, and we're going to continue to evolve, and the situation will continue to evolve. The input of the Commissioner, as well as that of stakeholders in industry and non-governmental organizations regarding the program has been fabulously welcomed and valued. In fact, since the launch of the program, the department has made periodic changes throughout to improve its delivery. The audit report helped us shape the relaunch of the program that happened on January 19th. We received the audit that came out in the public on November 25th. So in particular, the things that we have done, and now my computer screen is freezing because that's the perfect time for that to happen. But let me just give those things to you now. So the three things that I would just flag for you. So we narrowed the scope to only projects that fully eliminate intentional routine methane venting and flaring. So those are the projects that will come forward in the third project intake period. We strengthened the criteria applied to focus on the greatest return on investment from an emissions perspective. And the third big thing that we did is we provided greater transparency to ensure that projects demonstrate reductions that are incremental to Canada's methane reductions. These changes are going to further improve the program from its foundation, consistent with the conditions that we're in today. So we're really grateful to have the opportunity to talk to you about this today. This is a program that gets into some technical issues, and I'm very grateful to have the Director General of the Clean Fuels Branch, my colleague Debbie Scharf, here to speak with me, and then I'll end there and we'll look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll go now to the Department of Environment, Ms. Geller.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, committee members. So in the interest of time, let me just do two things. So first of all, say that we too agree with the Commissioner's recommendations, and we look forward to meeting with you today and discussing the report. My name is Hilary Geller. I'm the Assistant Deputy Minister of the Strategic Policy Branch at Environment Canada. I have direct responsibilities for sustainable development, including leading work across government on the Federal Sustainable Development Strategy. And also my branch leads through our regional offices the delivery of various freshwater programs in the Great Lakes in Lake Winnipeg and the St. John Wallastock. We also lead Environment Canada's collaboration with the Department of Finance on certain specific climate-related initiatives like sustainable finance. I'm also joined today by my colleague, Doug Nevison, the Interim Assistant Deputy Minister of the Climate Change Branch. And finally, we are joined by Vincent Nung, the Director General of Horizontal Policy Engagement and Coordination in the Climate Change Branch. So as a collective, we're really looking forward to answering your questions on this report. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, et merci de...
Thank you, and thank you for being so brief. So we have time for one round of questions, a 6-minute turn. We're going to begin with the Conservatives, Mr. Davidson and Mr. Mazier. Mr. Davidson. Go ahead.
Putting my time with my colleague, Mr. Major. If you could keep an eye on time. Thanks very much. And thank you, Mr. DeMarco. I wanted to say, you know, I appreciate your backdrop, that great picture. It almost looks like the Black River going into the great body of the water of Lake Simcoe. So thanks very much. I'll have to keep my comments brief, Mr. Chair, because I only have 3 minutes. I'm going to try and focus on report number 6. And I guess to Mr. DeMarco, what did you identify as the primary reason for the various, you know, departments failing to report their progress on the strategy?
Thank you for the question, and thank you for the compliment regarding my late mother's oil painting in the background. So thank you very much. And it is an Ontario scene, so you're not far off. I'm going to ask David Normand, who was the principal responsible for the Sustainable Development Strategy report, to address that question. Monsieur Normand?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So this year again, we looked at the departmental actions that the individual departments were reporting on in line with the federal development strategy, and assessed based on the reporting that they provided to Parliament the extent of progress. And for various reasons, we found many flaws in the reporting. First off, we found that almost half of the departments in their departmental actions towards meeting the goal had not made links to the targets that are defined in the federal strategy, leaving us, with when reading the departmental sustainable development strategies, asking ourselves questions as to how they actually contribute in a meaningful way to the achievement of these of the targets. But even more concerning, we found that almost half of the reporting that we reviewed this year had no reporting, had reported no progress, no tangible progress towards.
Sorry, no,
yes?
just because I'm on limited time. So I think what you're hinting at, it was poor. There's a lot of gray. Half the reporting wasn't done. You know, this is the type of stuff that's very concerning to Canadians. And again, you know, Canadians find that their report go in a storage unit somewhere and there's no one held accountable and there's no action taken. So, you know, is there any indication that's been taken, you know, from the flaws that were identified, that would they be addressed before, you know, the 2019-2022, or are we going to be waiting now to the 2022-2025 strategy?
Well, I must say all departments and agencies that were subject to this year's report accepted our recommendation to improve the reporting. Now, for the following years, we're adopting a bit of a different approach, where instead of just looking at the quality of the reporting, we're going to also look at the actual outcomes with the audit level of assurance. This means we're going to go into the individual programs in departments. And see if we can assess and see any tangible progress on the various actions.
Okay, and just quickly, you know, my colleague, Mr. Duguid, he mentioned, you know, 26 government agencies, I think he said, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, touch water. Are you finding these bureaucracies are getting so big, they can't manage? They can't manage what you're asking for? Is the bureaucracy just can't deal with the amount of reporting that has to be done now?
Sorry, is the question still for me?
It is, yeah.
Okay, well, currently under the Act, under effect, there are 27 departments and agencies that are subject to producing the reporting, and this number will increase to nearly 100. So yes, this entails a lot of coordination between departments. The lead coordination is performed by ECCC. On these reports, yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. I guess this is for the Agriculture and Environment. Under Report 3, has the government discussed any potential plan to limit the amount of fertilizer that can be applied to agriculture land? So first, I guess, the Agriculture Department.
I'm not really equipped to discuss that particular question at this time. It was not part of the audit, which is kind of what I'm
part of the
prepared
nutrients. Under the nutrient management and sustainable fertilizers, a very integral part of it. How about under environment? Any department has discussed about application of fertilizer on agricultural land?
And we certainly have lots of research on it, and we have programs to help reduce it.
Is there anybody can answer that question? Has anybody talked about fertilizer in these departments?
Yes, of course.
And how are they talking about it? Are they talking about restricting use of fertilizer in Canada?
I'm not aware of any discussions about restricting it. We're certainly working to optimize its use. Matt Perry, maybe you want to jump in on this?
Very briefly, please.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. The government did indicate that it was intending to work with the agriculture sector to look at opportunities to reduce greenhouse gas emissions associated with fertilizer use. So that work is ongoing.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll go to Ms. Thompson now for 6 minutes.
Thank you. Still takes me a minute to get off mute. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to say how pleased I am to be part of this conversation today. I am the MP, one of the 6 members from Newfoundland and Labrador, but I represent St. John's East. So this is very important within my riding, and certainly the conversations that I've had with stakeholders in the community, you know, the link to a movement to lower through actions of emissions to get to net zero in a timely fashion is incredibly important. You know, the balance between the environment, the economy, these are things I hear all the time, and the need to move with very much in a just transition. And I respect that many of these things have been discussed, so I don't, you know, want to bring you down that path again, but just shift a little bit, still staying with climate change. And I'm not sure, Mr. Commissioner, if you're the one to answer this, or you, Ms. Geller, but what I'm really curious to learn from you, and something that's very important to me, is that whole concept of partnerships here. So, you know, as we move to address the climate change crisis, we know that it requires leadership and coordination among all government actors. And I believe that was the word you used, and I absolutely agree with this. So it's not only federal organizations, but provincial, territorial, municipalities, municipal governments. And it also, you state that there's a risk that climate action could be hampered through an uncoordinated policy approach. So with that in mind, and again, whoever wants to take the question, a link to just the percentage of Canada's greenhouse gas emissions that are attributable to federal measures as opposed to joint measures, or those that that are initiated purely at other levels of government. So just that lens of the different players involved in getting us to net zero.
Well, I'll jump in and start, and perhaps Ms. Geller would like to add in. So yeah, whole of society. So we're looking beyond just governments, of course. The whole of society approach is necessary. In terms of the apportioning the amount of work that needs to be done at different levels, it's the answer is everybody needs to do a part. One of the I guess recent advancements was the Pan-Canadian framework was a national plan as opposed to just a federal plan. So that idea of a national plan working together is an excellent starting point, so that people have a common goal as opposed to their own agendas. Even federal initiatives can be provincial initiatives at the same time. For example, carbon price or the methane regulation. There are equivalency provisions allowing the province to step in with a made in the province solution that displaces the federal solution as long as it reaches the same levels of say the requirements of the federal one. So yeah, they need to work together, and I can't tell you that 60% of the target will be achieved by this level and 40% What we do need is a national approach where the federal government is who signed the Climate Change Convention and the Paris Agreement. They take the responsibility for coordinating all of those efforts, but they don't act at the exclusion of all of those other actors that you mentioned, as well as Indigenous communities and local communities and so on. Does Ms. Geller wish to add something to that?
Thank you. I think my colleague Doug Nevison is actually going to step in on this point.
Thank you very much, Hillary, and thank you, Commissioner, and thank you very much for the question. Mr. Chair, it's an excellent question, and I agree completely with the Commissioner that meeting Canada's climate targets and commitments will require positive partnerships across the Federation, and that extends not just to sort of federal and provincial territorial governments, but to municipal governments, national Indigenous organizations and representatives, industry associations, stakeholders, you name it. It's going to be, as the Commissioner rightly noted in his retrospective, it's going to require efforts and coordination across the board to achieve the ambitious targets. With respect to your question in terms of who's doing what at what level between the federal levels and the provincial and territorial levels. There are a number of reporting mechanisms in place. The Commissioner mentioned the Pan-Canadian Framework, and under that particular initiative, there is an annual synthesis report, which reports on the actions that have been taken both at the federal level, but by each of the provinces and territories in order to contribute to Canada's climate efforts. And the next report, synthesis report, will be likely coming out in the next couple of months for, I believe, the 2019 year. We do have a little bit of a lag on reporting on that front. But another area was in the nationally determined contribution that was submitted to the UNFCCC back in July, which announced the Canada's commitment of 40 to 45% GHG emission reduction below 2005 levels by 2030. There were annexes that provided for each province and territory, and also national Indigenous organizations, the efforts that they are making to help achieve those targets.
Thank you.
So just to say that there is a lot of information out there and a lot of activity and effort across the board. Thank you.
Okay, Madame Posé, 6 minutes. Vous êtes en sourdine.
You're on mute, Mrs. Posé, 6 minutes. Mrs. Posé? Sorry, I didn't hear my name. Thank you to the department officials present. My question is from the lady from the Natural Resources Department with regards to the Emissions Reductions Fund. Did you have the responsibility for create a program that would register real reductions of greenhouse gas emissions? Yes or no?
Est-ce que c'était dans votre...
Was it in your mandate? Was this part of your mandate?
Emissions inventory? I just want to make sure I understand your question properly.
Pouvez-vous répéter la question, Madame Posé?
Could you repeat your question, Mrs. Posé? Yes. I hope this is not part of my time. So it's the Greenhouse Gas Emission Reduction Fund. That's the name of the fund. So did the department have the order to create a program that would allow to reduce greenhouse gas emissions?
You understand the question?
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to make sure that I understood the question properly, and my apologies, Mr. Chair.
No, go ahead.
So, yeah, so we were given the mandate to create a program to add infrastructure to existing projects that would lead to an outcome to reduce or eliminate methane from those facilities. And a number of the projects and programs that we put in place have the outcome of reducing emissions.
Oui, c'est effectivement ce que j'avais lu.
Yes, that's what I read in your note. But when I look at the report of the commissioner, the report is quite damning. So I don't see why we're continuing on with a program when when there's a monumental failure here, because given the obligations that we have as elected people, we have to work against the climate crisis. Here's another question, and it's for the Commissioner. Over the past 5 years, Canada spent $2.6 billion and gave this to about 50 projects under the rubric Canada's participation in international climate change, fighting international climate change. So is this money used to, is it really to reduce climate change? Answer. This is a program that, well, we might have an audit on this subject because it's a very valid question. It's a question that we are asking ourselves. And I cannot answer the question right now because we have not completed an audit. But as yourselves, we are quite interested in seeing if there are results with this fund or not. We need to audit this in order to provide a conclusion. It's a valid question. Thank you. My next question would be to the Department of the Environment, Mrs. Geller, or Mr. Geller, rather. According to the Commissioner's report, the federal government is not succeeding in coordinating the efforts to advance commitments in fighting against climate change. So there are decisions that are made and that are contradictory, and I'm talking about the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion and the creation of the coastal program. By looking at these two examples, how can your department react to the strategic decisions that are made by other departments when these decisions are incompatible with the mandate of the Environmental Department, that is to fight against climate change?
Thank you for the question. I'll start, and then my colleague Doug Nevison, who's responsible for the climate change branch, may want to come in. Environment Canada is responsible for supporting actions across the government, including many of our own, that add up to achieving the government's climate change commitments. I think that's probably the clearest way I can articulate that. We don't tell departments what to do. We support the government overall in putting in place the cumulative programs and policies that they need to achieve the objectives. But Doug may want to come in on that point.
Thanks, Hillary. Chair, if I may, I'd like to just add a point under the Canadian Net Zero Emissions Accountability Act. One of the key obligations is to coordinate across the federal government in developing, for example, the emissions reduction plan that will be tabled or established, I should say, by the end of March. So coming back to the question, it is indeed very important now that climate is being sort of mainstreamed in many government policy decisions to ensure that that coordination across the government is clear. As I said, the Act will help us, I think, on that front in terms of that coordination policy. We do also have at various levels, at the officials level, there's a deputy minister's climate policy implementation committee and other levels.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I do know the structure and all of that. I would have one last question. Briefly, I'll give you a little bit of extra time, but briefly. Thank you. There is an upcoming study on climate risks because climate risks concerned the state of collaboration between the Department of the Environment and the Department of Finance. I would like to, well, actually, I'd like to have a document showing us what is the cooperation between these teams. The Action Committee for Climate Action and the Department of the Environment. Noted. Your request is noted. Mrs. Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, to Mr. DeMarco, you described what you call the government's policy incoherence. For example, purchasing the Trans Mountain Pipeline project expansion on the one hand, while pledging to reduce emissions on the other hand. And just curious if you see this emissions reduction fund as part of that policy incoherence, and what impact do you think this policy incoherence has on our ability to reduce emissions and meet our climate targets?
Thank you, Ms. Collins. So the Emissions Reduction Fund has the potential to be an example of policy incoherence because of the refusal of the department to look at the big picture of net emissions. So you've heard the number 4.7 megatons in emissions reductions. We've heard the number yesterday at the Natural Resources Committee about the 97% of emissions being additional. But until you factor in the effect of production or continued production or expanded production, you don't have a net number. And if the net number is close to zero or negative because of increases in production, then you get into the policy coherence area. If in practice the net emissions are lowered, then it is a worthwhile project as long as it's being done on an efficient cost per ton basis. So yes, it does provide an example of the potential for policy incoherence. In this case, partly because, or mostly because, they will not look at the net emissions and continue to look at equipment level emissions without looking at the whole facility and all of the facilities together that are subject to the funding. Until we get to that approach of net emissions, we may never see the curve come down in Canada, because if we don't look at the big picture, then you can have individual programs that appear to be adding value, yet the overall emissions curve goes up. We need to look at it in a holistic manner.
Thanks, Mr. DeMarco. And so to Ms. Johnson, will the department be conducting additional analysis to determine whether the program constitutes an inefficient fossil fuel subsidy? Reading report 4, it seems pretty clear that the Emissions Reduction Fund was essentially, at least in a policy set up to be an inefficient fossil fuel subsidy that allows companies to expand production rather than fulfill the fund's emission reduction mandate.
Thanks very much for the question. And so maybe, Mr. Chair, I'd just say one thing and maybe ask Debbie to jump in afterwards. So when infrastructure is added with the intention of eliminating it, so when we put the infrastructure on, we can say that it does eliminate the intentional venting and flaring of methane emissions into the environment. It's adding it to a facility, it's gone, it's having a positive impact on those emissions. And when we get to the G20 definition of what is an inefficient fossil fuel subsidy, it is not, this is something that is helping move on the trajectory to a net zero pathway. And so it isn't.
So just to pause you there for a moment. So given that companies were given public dollars, they admitted in their applications that they were increasing emissions. How does this not constitute an inefficient fossil fuel subsidy? And so,
yeah,
given,
and I'll pass over to Debbie, who was on the program, but this is the production that was already planned. So Debbie, if you want to jump in on that.
For sure. Just before you continue, just also connecting to Mr. DeMarco's comments on the kind of change in frame that he is recommending.
Fantastic. And we have made changes on January 19th with the implementation of the third intake period. So maybe Debbie, you can run through that too.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. So yes, once again, just to reiterate that this is a program that is focused on reducing sources of methane from existing oil and gas production. It's not a program that is tackling the emissions from an entire sector. It's one part of a plan, one part of several instruments that are addressing GHG emissions. So we are focusing on reducing the sources of methane, the things that make methane go up in the air. And the particular ones that we're focusing on is what Ms. Johnson has referred to as the intentional venting and flaring of emissions. The reason why is because those sources are responsible for 75% of the methane emissions in the oil and gas sector. So we counted when a project was being implemented with funds under the Emission Reduction Fund, we counted after that project was implemented, how the emissions would go down. And if there was already scheduled increases in production, how the emissions would go up associated with methane, because that was the point of this program. I'd also like to add that every company is required as part of receiving federal dollars to implement continuous monitoring and verification for 5 years following the implementation of those projects, and to report that data to the Government of Canada.
I have very limited time. Doesn't it seem like public dollars would be better spent in investing in renewables? When we find out that these subsidies are not even achieving the kind of overall credible reductions in the oil and gas sector, how can you explain how Natural Resources Canada will ensure that money in this and other funding programs are used in a way that actually reduce our net emissions?
So the first thing I'll say is the IPCC makes it very clear we will not get to 1.5 degrees in the long term without tackling methane. The International Energy Agency agrees with that. So tackling methane in the short term is critical. We are talking about a global warming potential significantly higher than CO2 and a short-lived climate pollutant. So this is critical to reducing emissions nationally. And as I said before, and as Ms. Johnson indicated, when there is a project that eliminates the sources of methane, if production goes up, production goes down, or production stays the same, it's eliminated.
Yes or no, for sure. Just a quick yes or no. Given the
yes
Environment Commissioner's
we're over time.
report, are you concerned? You seem to be defending a program. Are you concerned given the Commissioner's report?
Okay. Yes or no? I mean, we were way over time here, Ms. Collins. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So okay, but I mean, an interesting question, an interesting line of attack, and interesting answers. So this brings us to the end of our meeting. Yes, Mr. Albus.
So rather than having a full committee meeting, respecting that members' times on for Thursday, maybe we could just use the time for the subcommittee. We can discuss the subcommittee report, maybe update it. That would be a much more efficient use of time for us.
Sorry,
to do that.
Could you repeat that?
So rather than having Thursday a discussion on the subcommittee report, why don't we just have a subcommittee meeting where we can discuss and then maybe issue a new report? Maybe it's the same, maybe it's slightly different, maybe we had a few more items that perhaps that you and the clerk are dealing with, but rather than have a full committee meeting on Thursday to discuss the subcommittee report, it might just be helpful for us to have a meeting in the minds.
I'll take note of that, but we still have the problem that the full committee has to adopt the subcommittee report, and it wasn't able to do so today.
Well,
on a very simple matter.
Mr. Chair, I don't want to be critical of anyone, but again, I'm not the person that approves the subcommittee report, and I just noticed that there was a detail in that report that I don't believe was agreed to by everyone. Now, I may be wrong. That's where I'd like us to have a subcommittee meeting where we can maybe do a new report.
Well, I'll take it under advisement, but we are past 1 o'clock now.
Well, Mr. Chair, again, I'm just trying to save a big, long process, and maybe if we have a good meeting of the minds and we actually agree verbatim, we probably wouldn't have this issue again.
Perhaps, but my objective is the same as yours, is to get on with the nuclear study and so on, if we can, a nuclear study, if we agree to a nuclear study. Motion to adjourn? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.